Hello again everybody, so today I'm back with my wrap up for March. Now normally I do them as one big video, my wrap up and my to be read, but this month I know I talk a lot and I've got a lot of books to talk about, so I think it's better to split them into two separate videos. So today I'll be looking at what I read in March, it's a really good bunch, and what I thought about them. In a couple of days I'll be back with another video for my April books and what I'm looking forward to reading then. So I hope it works well this way. Let me guys know what you think, if you like them as a split video or combined. But I just know already that I'm going to talk for far too long and we'll be here for hours if I do them combined into one. So let me know what you think, but without further ado I'll get straight on with what I read in March. Now I'm actually having a bit of a dumb moment and can't remember quite what order I read these in, but I know I read all of these, so that's what matters. Firstly is Bleach. So this is volumes 4, 5 and 6. So the follow-up to the ones I read a couple of months ago. I'd not read any manga for a while, noticed this one on the shelf and thought, right, I really enjoyed it, why have I not read it already? Picked this up and enjoyed it just as much as the first. This really diversifies the cast of characters and explores some of the otherwise peripheral characters in a lot more detail, which I enjoyed. And other than that, it's the same action-packed, demon fighting, giant sword swinging fun fest that the first one was. So enjoyed it just as much, and I'm looking forward to reading a lot more of them. I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. The one slight concern I have about these is that this is volumes 4 to 6, and I think volume 66 has just been released, so I've got a lot of reading to be doing, but I will get there. The next book I read was None of the Above by Rick Edwards, so starting to feel a bit politicsy in the run-up to the election here in the UK. This was billed as a book which was about getting young people more involved in politics, and it explains why it's important for young people to be involved, what young people can do even if they don't like the options currently available to them, and this really helped me to cement what I believed, what politics I followed, and also got me a lot more excited about politics. I'm going to look at doing a lot more reading and be a lot more interested in the general election than I would have been before. Any young people feeling a bit apathetic towards the election, give this a read. It's really cleverly done and it's a really good introduction. I gave this a 9 out of 10. If you've been watching any of my other videos, you'll know that I'm a big fan of this Little Black Classic series, and I managed to read another couple this month. I'd already set out to read the Communist Manifesto. Found it really interesting as a history student. This was something I really should have read before and really enjoyed getting around to it. And then I also read The Gate of the Hundred Sorrows by Rudyard Kipling. It's a collection of short stories, and I have to say that was absolutely sensational. I can really see why Kipling's got his reputation, and of all of these I've read so far, that was definitely my favourite. Another book I read this month, and possibly my favourite book of this month, is The Psychopath Test by Jon Ronson. So this is the exact kind of book I really like, but I'd still never got round to reading any Jon Ronson at all. He came to visit my shop at Waterstones and Leeds this month, so I thought, right, this is the time to read it. And he's a fascinating guy, and I have to say this is one of the best pieces of non-fiction I've ever read. It's basically all about psychopaths, who they are, how we know who psychopaths are, what it means to be a psychopath. Very, very interesting issues it covers. But the way it does it, it feels so easy to read. It's almost like fiction, but it's fascinating, really interesting stuff, beautifully written. I read this in literally about 6-7 hours because I just sat down and once I started, could not stop reading. If you've never read any Jon Ronson, read this. I've given it a 9.5 out of 10. Another book I read this month is Strings of Murder by Oscar de Muriel. So my colleagues had recommended this to me, and I have to say it's a beautiful cover, so I knew as soon as I saw it that I'd want to read it. It's kind of a cosy crime meets supernatural read, and it's set in late 19th century Edinburgh. Main character is sent to work in Scotland. Lots of fears about the Ripper, and it looks like a copycat has arisen, and they're exploring that mystery. Now what this does really well is it's got a really good pairing between the two main characters, who I think will be a really good pair going forward. They'll have a really long series, I think, about them because they're fascinating characters. And secondly, it incorporates kind of vaguely supernatural elements in a really clever way that doesn't feel supernatural. So it's very, very, very good, very enjoyable, and you never see what's coming. I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. This is one of the ones I was most excited about this month. Finn Fancy Necromancy by a guy called Randy Henderson. So as soon as I saw this cover, I knew it'd be one I'd want to read. And it does live up to what it promises. It's very quirky, tongue-in-cheek, humorous, and I really enjoyed it. I did have a few reservations about it. Its build has been quite nostalgic and really embracing 80s culture. It doesn't really. The main character is basically imprisoned in the mid-80s and gets released again in the 21st century and his brain is still in the 80s essentially, but it doesn't really play on that very much. There's passing references to old games consoles and TV shows, but nothing really that significant, so I feel like it was a little bit misled with how it was billed there. The characters were interesting, but I have to say there were some of them I didn't like. It felt like the cast was a bit too big at some points. But if you're wanting something different, something very tongue-in-cheek, in the kind of fantasy genre, give this a read. I've given it a 7.5 out of 10. So another book I read this month, which actually I was meant to read in February and didn't get round to, is Liriel by Garth Nix. So I've talked about this series loads of times. It's one of my favourite series ever growing up, and I decided to take the dangerous risk of re-meeting my hero. Now, the first one I loved. This one I similarly loved, but not quite as much. My main concern with this is that the ending of it feels very much like it's not wrapped up. It's very much setting the scene for the third book rather than being its own full story. And I understand that they have set up for the third book. I just feel like it's not done in the most intelligent of ways, and that puts a downer on it for me. Still, love the characters, love the writing style, love the world he's created. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. So the last book I read this month was Secrets of the Knights Templar by S.J. Hodge. So, as I've mentioned previously as well, I've kind of got a bit of an interest in conspiracy theories, not because I believe them, but because I think they're very interesting social constructs, and the Knights Templar have got more around them than anybody else, really, especially since the Da Vinci Code really made it more mainstream. Decided to have a look and actually work out what the history of the organisation was and how the kind of myths were born. This book looked perfect, saw it in a second-hand shop and thought, let's do it. Really enjoyed learning about the history of the Knights Templar. It's told in a really straightforward, simple, but detailed enough manner, and it was one of the more readable histories I've read in quite a while. It did let me down in terms of exploring the conspiracy theory and myth side of it, though. With the title like Secrets of the Knights Templar, you'd expect quite a lot to be covered on that. There's a whole section at the end which is about 60 pages, but it covers so many theories in that time that it really barely touches on a lot of them. 2 or 3 pages at most, and for some of these theories you need a lot more than that. So, in terms of the history, loved it. In terms of the more psychological conspiracy theory element, bit of a letdown. I gave it a 7 out of 10. So there we have it. That's my wrap-up for March. I had a really good month. I've read, I think it works out 9 books. 2 of them were only 60 pages each, but I'm taking it. Other than that, I've split it into 2 videos, my wrap-up and my to-be-read, just because I know I can talk for quite a while, and 2 smaller chunks works out much better for everybody involved than 1 big, long, arduous video. So I'll be back in the next couple of days with that. But for now, if you've read any of the books I talked about today, comment down below and let me know what you thought. I'm intrigued to see if any of you have read them and what you thought about them. Other than that, like and subscribe if you've enjoyed it, please. I really appreciate it. And I'll put my Twitter and Goodreads in the description as well. Other than that, I'll see you in a couple of days with my to-be-read for April.